Thank the Force. Thursday, Star Wars Newsnet Live is back. Miguel is on my screen to talk Star Wars. We're not talking movies this time. We're talking Star Wars. Miguel has seen Andor. Tom in the building. I saw Tom already this week. We had our interview with James Caan this week, which is going to drop next week. We'll have an article we're working on. I am so excited because Rogue One, I rewatched it finally. I've been dying to rewatch it. I have a fun game to play that I know Miguel is going to absolutely love. So that's gonna be exciting. I'm just fired up, and I have to share a story real quick and welcome in, everyone. It's good to have everyone today, but this is good. Miguel, you're gonna appreciate this. I think this is gonna make you laugh. So
Pretty sure.
I've been getting some texts during my class this evening, and it was from some people in my school about what we were going to wear tomorrow for the final. Like, it's tomorrow's technically not the last day of school. We have 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday after Memorial Day, but most of my 8th graders are not showing up those 2 days. So effectively for them, tomorrow is kind of like the last day of school. And so we're doing this whole walkout and everything. And there was a text thread about there was a couple numbers I hadn't saved. And one of them was saying, hey, we're going to wear our grad venture shirts tomorrow, yada, yada, yada. And then one of those numbers said that theirs had shrunk 2 sizes when they washed it. And so me just trying to be funny, I said, oh, it's crop top Friday tomorrow. Admin can't kick us all out, can't they? My principal was the number that sent that text. And so I had no idea that my boss was in the group chat at all. And I'm like, we have a pretty good relationship. So I feel like, he's going to take that as some friendly banter. But thankfully he just, but I sent that and I was like, wait, did I ever save his number? This seems like he might be in a chat like this. And sure enough, yes, he is in the group chat, and he was the one that I said that to. I also had said something. I was making a joke earlier about something, and anyway, so just completely just thought it was funny. But I feel like that it's not entirely unsurprising for anyone who really knows me that well at all that I would be that oblivious maybe to who was in the chat and just trying to be funny, say something, but it's okay.
We have
It's
to
all
break
good.
the ice at some point.
Exactly. Work with this person for years, so I mean, hopefully the ice has been broken before then. But if he didn't know now, that maybe I just go all in. Like, Crop Top Friday is a thing tomorrow. They can't send this
So
all
what are
home.
you gonna wear tomorrow? That's the question.
I'm gonna wear my grad picture. I'm wear my shirt. I'll try
Oh,
to
okay. That's
represent. Like,
disappointing.
no, I have to wear it. Well, I had already they wanted to wear all the 8th grade teachers. They want us to wear it. I'm a team player, Miguel. Like, I'm a team player. I try to make sure that I'm a camaraderie like engineer. I'm trying to engineer the best vibes possible for school today. Shout out to one of my students who, Tom, we played this game today, and I play it usually on like once a week, Fridays usually. And I usually don't play. I usually just make sure that they don't kill each other while we play it. And it's just like it's just a basic, like, student names a category. We go in a row who can name things in that category. Once you repeat or you take too long, you're out. Next person has to name a category. You can't repeat the category. And so it goes on and on. We were doing that. All they wanted to do today was play that game. And I'm like, you know what? There's 4 days. Like, basically tomorrow's their last day of school. So sure, like, we'll have like the ultimate competition. But I was like, you know what? I am playing today. Like, I'm inserting myself into this competition because I need something. And we got down to the final 2. I was squaring off against one of my students, and he looked me in the eyes and said, like, he has been training for this all year, and said, Star Wars characters. And I said, are you ready to die and lose this matchup? And he was so confident. This young child, we went like 40 characters deep, and it's, rapid fire. Like, you wait more than that, because the class is watching at this point, and they count you down. They're like 5, 4, 3. And that's a lot of pressure, with all this. I was struggling. I had to get into my High Republic character lore real quick because I knew that there's no way this kid's reading High Republic books, so I knew I wouldn't have to worry. But it was a little bit scary there for a minute. I was like, I can't lose this battle.
So the question is, was it like 40 characters each or 40 characters in total?
It was like it was like a few
So
minutes.
it's like 80 characters in total.
It was insane. This man said he's
Impressive.
been following social media. This man said Exarch Hoon. Like this is
Wow.
He said, I was
It's a nice
I
one.
mean, I said a member of the Bad Batch, and he goes, "You're not going to take my characters away from me, sir." And then he just goes straight into every Bad Batch character. And I'm like,
Nice.
okay, I'm just gonna stay away from anything. I'm gonna trip myself up. But
I would have went to the holiday special at that point.
I mean, I said Mace Windu, and he comes back with Depa Billaba. I was like, oh, we know Mace Windu's Padawan now. Okay, like, he said, "Sir, I have been training for this for the last few weeks."
Wow.
Fair enough. So it's all good. But anyway, so we have a lot of fun things to talk about this evening. I have a fun game, a character game, but it's not a like name these character game. We have some 1 year from Mando movie. So we can do a little bit of just some fun
today,
speculation talk about that. I'm looking forward to that. We have some Nielsen ratings. I know, Miguel, you put the article out there on that, which, of course, you used it just as a way to talk about The Last of Us, of course. But that's neither here nor there.
That's just
And,
theory.
and obviously, we have Rogue One is going to be our main topic, revisiting Rogue One. Each of us have watched it like in the last week, so that's exciting. We can talk about maybe how Andor has shaped our thoughts on part of that or what we appreciated more. But everyone, welcome in. You can follow us Apple and Spotify at Star Wars Newsnet. Leave a review there for us. If that would be great. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I'm sorry about all the weird times. I'll be transparent that it is the NBA playoffs, and I am trying to work our schedule around when the Thunder play. They're playing right now, but the goal is to be ready for the second half, of course. And my school schedule is a little bit weird, but in theory, 10 o'clock Eastern time every Thursday, except for if they are playing again next Thursday night at 8:30. Anyway, let's start with, you guys want to start with Mando or 1 year out from Mando, or do you guys want to start off with a fun game tonight? Like what are you guys wanting to do?
Let's start off with Mando, I guess.
Okay, so we're 1 year away from the Mandalorian and Grogu. We now finally got the update we've all been waiting for, that Avengers Doomsday is not going to be, crowding that May spot. It's going to move over to December and crowd the December spot now. So Mando and Grogu is not going to suffer the same fate as Solo and have an Avengers movie right there next to it. So that's exciting to finally get that. But we're a year away. What are the vibes right now for Mando and Grogu? We're fresh off Andor, so this is like the next main thing that's going to happen in Star Wars. What are we feeling right now?
I'm excited. I want to see what now that it's a feature film. Obviously, they can have more time with it. They can really develop it more. I'm curious to see where the story goes. We kind of left on a nice, happy ending in season 3 that looked like it was possibly like a series closer as far as their story was coming to an end. They were kind of living happily ever after. But I'm just curious to see where they go. I'm hoping that they bring in some legacy characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the interesting thing, and I think I brought this up at another show, is that because it's probably going to be followed not that long after by Ahsoka season 2, I'm curious to see what this is going to set up for that show, as far as Thrawn, as far as the apparent war that's building up, and
Right.
In some of my fanboy speculations, it looks like they're setting the table to take some of the beats from the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
Right.
So I'm really excited and curious to see how that plays out.
Legacy characters, are you talking specifically like, a Han, Luke, Leia, or like a Lando, or are there other characters that you are mainly, thinking that they might bring into the fold?
I'm thinking, it's like what I think they're gonna do, what I want them to do, and one of my fanboy speculations. But I mean, I think we're gonna see at least one of the original character, or the big three, Luke, Han, and Leia, or even Lando. I think we're gonna see one of them in this movie.
Right.
I don't know if they're gonna pull all of them into it and have some kind of adventure that kind of intersects with Mando's arc, but which I would love to see. But now that kind of Andor kind of tempered expectations, or kind of showed us how I love how Tony Gilroy stuck to his guns with bringing in characters that weren't or not bringing in characters that weren't absolutely essential. So I don't know if they're going to follow that lead and do that, but I'm kind of excited because I think we're going to have some really cool surprises.
I'm curious. Luke seems to be the one that makes the most. Like if any of the original three are going to be in it, it's Luke. Just he's been in the Mandalorian. They could easily tie his story in somehow to what's going on. I am fascinated to see what would happen in a feature film if they're going to stick with the AI stuff with I always forget what it's called, like the way they do the face thing, or if they actually recast.
Deep
so
fake.
that would be something. The deep fake, yes, thank you. That would be fascinating to me. And of course, we've talked about that many times before. But Miguel, like, what's your overall vibe check? Mando Grogu.
I mean, I'm just gonna fact check you because Avengers is off, but I think that Mando is facing some stiff competition with the Devil Wears Prada sequel. So you are underestimating a big movie here.
That's on me.
Take hundreds of millions from Mando.
That's on me though.
Yeah.
That's a glaring oversight that
glaring.
I'll have to work to correct for sure.
Absolutely. So in terms of the actual movie, I don't really see legacy characters being pulled into this. Like, I guess
Other than Rhoda the Hutt.
That's where I was gonna go. Like, if you're talking, legacy characters, like if Rhoda the Hutt counts, then yeah. If you're talking about Seb, then absolutely, we've seen him already. Am I counting on other people potentially from Rebels? Possibly. I think that the sky is blue now with, I guess, both Sabine and Ahsoka are back in Peridia, but Ezra and Hera are in our main galaxy, so that's potentially on the table. But yeah, I'm not really expecting Luke. I'm not expecting Leia, and definitely not expecting Han. So
right.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a like a contained adventure where like these two characters just go off on some mission that is essential to the future of the New Republic, and that's where they're gonna bring in like this larger canvas where Thrawn is like coming in, and there's like this secret council, the Shadow Council, sorry, that is just waiting for orders. And I think
I'm just ready for that Mando Grogu theme to just blast while I'm at the IMAX theater and having just the absolute full cinematic experience of the Mando Grogu theme with them going off jetpacking into the sunset.
Reminds me, it will be interesting to see if Ludwig is back scoring the movie after he didn't score season 3, but maybe that
perhaps
it's like a feature. Maybe he's more interested. I guess he's also doing Nolan's next movie, which is like out a couple months later. So he may be booked for that as well.
And he's gotten to the point where when it comes to these big projects, he could kind of almost pick and choose probably from a lot of things that he has at this point.
I do think that it wouldn't be the first time that he does two of these big projects in the same year. So I guess the biggest thing that comes to mind is 2020 when he did the Nolan movie and also Mando season 2. But I'm pretty sure if I think hard enough, I will come up with another one. Like I guess potentially Black Panther 2 and Oppenheimer were not too far away from each other, but like not like 2 months 2 months apart. But yeah,
What do you guys? So, what do you guys think of this though? I saw this on Twitter, and it was since Avengers is now like slotted on the same theoretical day as Dune Part 3.
yeah.
They said like like this is going to be the Avengers Dunes Day, and that's going to be way better than Barbenheimer. It's going to put Barbenheimer to shame when we get Avengers Dunes Day. Start printing the T-shirts. We could.
I like the joke. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think Warner's wants to be within 100 miles of Avengers.
I can't wait.
So-
What are we gonna do? What are we gonna call the trifecta when we go see Avengers Doomsday, Doom Part 3, and then the Hunt for Gollum, Miguel, on the same weekend?
No, Hunt for Gollum is supposed
Oh,
to be
it's
2027.
2027. Okay, so
Yeah.
Secret Wars, Hunt for
Yeah.
Gollum. What are we calling that? Like, what's that gonna be? Where we can
I don't
workshop
know.
some titles.
I don't know.
We can workshop some titles. We
Yeah,
can workshop
probably. Yeah.
So Mando and Grogu, we're 1 year out. I'm excited, and something I'm not going to tolerate is, and this is it's Star Wars, of course, but is the whole Andor's done now. So now there's that group of people that say, "Oh my gosh, now that Andor's done, we have to go back to the way that things were before, and how horrible everything is other than Andor." And I hate the idea that we have to live in this this constant ridiculousness of, if my Star Wars project is not like this, then that it's not going to be good. When this movie, if it's not going to be tonally similar to Andor in any facet or any way, but that in no way doesn't mean this can't be a really, really fun, great movie. I'm really excited. Like I honestly am more excited for this than I was for Andor season 2. And I was so excited for Andor season 2 just because big screen, Star Wars, adventure. I feel like I'm going to be able to get a bucket of popcorn, sit back, recline, and have a time of my life for 2 hours, and not expect this to be something that has maybe galaxy-wide stakes, but it's going to be something that everyone's going to be talking about to a certain degree. Like, I can talk about this with students that next year, or or depending on what day school ends that year as well. Like, students are going to go see it, even if they're not big Star Wars fans. That's something that they're probably going to go see because of Mando, Grogu. Everyone knows who they are. Some of my other friends and family who don't watch Andor, but they're going to go to the movies because it's a Star Wars movie and it features some of that. So culturally, I think it's going to be much more fun to have those conversations and be around, especially if the movie's pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that's the case. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say it reminds me of when Rogue One was coming out, and it came out right in the middle of the sequel trilogy, and I felt like the sequel films had so much riding on them as far as expectations and bringing back the original cast. But Rogue One was kind of like a little gift that was thrown in there, and it was like, okay, let's check this out. It's something different, something that hasn't been explored, and it was so enjoyable. I know we'll get to that later on, but
Right.
I'm kind of feeling more optimistic about this movie, because I thought I would be one of those people, to be honest with you. I thought I'd be like, oh, nothing will ever, measure up to Andor. And realistically, it's like nothing, that was his vision. That was Tony Gilroy's vision. Obviously it was a masterpiece in my mind.
Right.
But there's room enough in the universe for movies like Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And I can't wait for it. So any other final thoughts on Mando
No,
Grogu? We have a whole year to talk about it.
That's like similar to saying, so I just saw, Lord of the Rings. I'm not gonna see any other movie ever again because it's not gonna measure up to that one. So,
but then you get the
that
Hobbit
doesn't
trilogy.
have to be like as good as Andor. Just has to be a fun time in the theater, and
Right.
it's gonna do. Well
Then
enough,
you
I
went to
think.
the theater and you saw the Battle of the Five Armies and realized that it's a
Yeah,
good thing you
exactly.
went to theaters again, because that's peak cinema. Absolutely. Oh, I saw this. This is so random. I'm just in a let's have fun kind of mood. I saw this ranking. I want to let you guys know. I saw this ranking of Disney live action adaptations.
Is it
And
Nate's?
No. This was just a random tweet that I saw, and it had like the original movie matched up with the adaptation and like the Rotten Tomatoes scores on them, and like in like order of for the adaptation of like order of like highest one to lowest one. And Cruella is a 75%, and it's like the third highest rated one. And I don't know. My hot take, is this a hot take? I don't know. It is the best of all of the adaptations. Like, I love that movie so much. That's just a side note. I just saw that. I don't know why that popped in my head, but I absolutely love that movie. I don't know if you guys seen that movie?
Cruella, yeah, I really did enjoy it. I don't know if it's like number one on my list. I'd have to like think about all of the movies that they did. I guess it's like up there for me. I honestly, like, hot take for me, I really liked Aladdin. I thought Aladdin was like so much better than it had any right to be.
I tweeted about this, of course, and I put in there that I totally loved Aladdin as well. It's probably my second favorite one. So it's in sync tonight, Miguel. I love it. I love it. You're back. We're in sync. Tom, are you a Cruella stan? Have you seen the movie? What are your thoughts on Cruella? Because that's the Star Wars information that everyone's probably yearning for this evening.
If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have seen all of them, but I have to say I have to catch up on some of the adaptations. I'm kind of a purist in that area. I love I love Disney animation, and I've seen all of the animated films, but I have to catch up on some of the live actions. I know they've been getting mixed reviews. I think the last one I saw was Beauty and the Beast, which is quite a while ago. So I think my kids aged out of some of them, so I haven't been taking them as much to those. But yeah, so I'll put that on my list if you guys.
So when Cruella came out, it was like
the Lion King movies. Just skip them.
Yeah. Well, when Cruella came out, it was like as theaters were starting to open up again, like here or there. And so that was the first movie I'd seen in over a year. And I was so embarrassed to tell people that the last movie I saw in theaters before COVID happened was Sonic the Hedgehog. And I was so embarrassed to say that. Not that it wasn't like a fun movie or anything, but I'm like, everyone has like certain these answers. I'm like, oh, Sonic the Hedgehog for me, you know. But it's all good. It's all good. So I have a fun game. You're gonna like this game. I promise you, this is going to be fun. And we have, I saw a tweet today, and it was saying, what characters in Star Wars deserve the quote-unquote Mon Mothma treatment of maybe a more obscure character, like a smaller character in one of the movies, but in some form or fashion, we're going to flesh them out and give them this really cool story of how they got to their point, or maybe afterwards of like the end of their story, depending on, you know, what happens. So I put together a list of just some really random characters. Some of them are actually like kind of very prominent, but I just thought, you know, it'd be fun to see more of their story, or some characters that literally maybe never have a line that they speak in Star Wars. Some of them I'm serious about them. Some of them are just for fun, just for, you know, for shits and giggles. But I have there's three rankings that you can attach to it based on how you feel about the character. So if you are all in on this story, you're giving it a Jar Jar ranking. And why you're giving it Jar Jar is because you're voting for emergency powers to get this done. Like, you are taking over, you're giving executive authority to Lucasfilm to make sure that this project happens. Okay, so Jar Jar, top ranking, emergency powers to get it done. Second ranking would be Anakin, because you feel lost. You want more, but you know that you shouldn't. Right? So that's why we're Anakin, okay? And then last, of course, this is like ingrained in my brain from when one of our listeners commented on this. And at this point, anytime a ranking has to be at the bottom, it has to be Chancellor Valorum. It is a vote of no confidence. You have no confidence in this, okay? So I will tell you a character. You'll give me Jar Jar, emergency powers. We get this done. You'll say Anakin, like, you know, you feel lost on this. Maybe you want more, but you know you shouldn't, so you have to say no. And then Valorum, like, vote of no confidence. This is not happening, okay? So first character is Padme's like lead handmaiden, Sabe. Okay, this is the first one. She's, barely, we have her like barely in Phantom Menace. There's some comics, of course, where she's fleshed out, some books, but possible interesting stories there with Padme's handmaidens, what happens to them afterwards. You could see something like fleshed out in a show, movie, etc. Tom, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, I would say Jar Jar, because I think that we didn't get enough of the handmaidens and what they do. I know there's some expanded, what do they call it? Some stuff in the comics that they explore the handmaidens, and I know that they expand on the story, and forgive me, I know you're more of the book person, but was it Sabe with she had like an arc with Vader or something like that after
And
the
it's in
event.
these like comics. They have like this arc with Vader and things like that. Yeah,
I think that would be very interesting, especially around the events of Order 66 and the formation of the Empire, and to see how, after Padme dies, how, what they do with that. So I would love to see that.
Okay, Miguel.
So just to check, this is Keira Knightley's character, right?
Sorry.
This is Keira Knightley's character. She played Sabe. Was that like? Am I thinking of the right one?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give this one the Anakin ranking, just because I think if I know you well enough, I'm gonna give the lowest ranking to most of the characters that you're gonna say. So I'm just gonna save that for another one. I'm giving this the Anakin ranking just because. So the Mon Mothma treatment, as I think I understand it, means that she is not necessarily the main character, but like she would be like a main vessel in another show, whereas like doesn't necessarily have to be about the handmaidens, but can be about the Naboo royalty, and then she gets like some premium role or something. I guess you have to recast, because like Keira Knightley is like 20, I guess more than 25 years older than she was when she filmed Phantom Menace. So it's not like you can.
She's not a teenager anymore.
Yeah.
We call it the Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah. So
we have an
Anakin. That was like a bit of a buy-in for me, but like you can still recast and probably find someone special.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We got this one. All right, we have Tali Lynchra. Now, if you don't remember Tali, if you remember Last Jedi, she's like the one's like, call in the bombers, and she's in the like ship, and she's the one that gets blown up there when it's like she's like the last person we see in the hangar bay. Whenever Poe Dameron is trying to run in, he gets blasted back. I don't know. I just always loved the way she delivered like some of those lines. Whoever the actress that played her, she's a prominent like resistance person that we see multiple times. We could have maybe another like a resistance type story where she's someone that builds up. I don't know. Miguel, you start first.
So, I know you said like earlier that we like are in sync tonight, but we're not quite there yet, because as soon as you start describing this game, I thought of one character, and that is Paige Tico.
Oh, the literal next person I had on my list, really? Mr. Miguel? Absolute cinema.
But like, how is that like? Well, anyways, how do you have both of them? Like, I think that this is like fast track to me immediately.
Yes.
Just because, first of all, because I loved The Last Jedi, and second of all, because I think that there's a lot to be said about the resistance and how it was built. Like, not necessarily like in the same way Andor was, but like a lot to be said about that era that can still be very different from.
Tali was my way to soft launch us into like a full-fledged resistance show. I was gonna be like, oh, so if you kind of are on board with that, maybe you really would love some of that, something like that.
Okay, so both of them fast track, Jar Jar treatment all the way.
Okay, Tom, Tali and Paige Tico, like where are you at with both of them?
I totally agree, because, and I think we spoke about this before, they have they're on the screen for such a short period of time, but I felt like there's so many times when we see battles in the movies, and a lot of the I guess participants seem like red shirts, and
Yeah.
you're not really drawn to them. I was really drawn to Tally. I was really drawn to Paige. I love that opening scene and how they, just how they, in the brief screen time we got with them, I just really felt like I wanted more of those characters. So Jar Jar all the way.
No, I agree. I think, obviously that's just one of my favorite scenes in The Last Jedi there with the bombing scene page.
Very memorable as well.
I like tell you could definitely do something with them. This one, so I think is going to be. I already know where Tom's going with this one.
Is it Max Rebo?
It's not Max Rebo. We have Wedge. We have Wedge. People have long wanted some sort of Rogue Squadron, type, X-Wing centered, movie or a show, something along those lines. We thought we were going to get a Rogue Squadron type movie. We obviously are not going to be getting that. So my question is, Wedge Antilles. Obviously, there's something there. There's a lot of Legends books about this, but I'll throw this one to you, Tom.
I love all the Rogue Squadron stories and books. I was kind of bummed that the movie never materialized, but I don't even know if it was going to go into Rogue Squadron during the original trilogy era. But
it was going to be like a post-9.
Yeah, that's I believe what was rumored. So I mean, there's so much Wedge. He made it through everything. And I would love to see some of the battles he was in that we didn't see on screen and some of his backstory. See, this game is tough for me because I want to see everybody get them on the stream. So, but yes, definitely Jar Jar for Wedge. I want to see more of him.
So I am going this, like, if Wedge shows up. So I am only going to buy into this if Wedge is like a cameo or like 2-episode cameo into the the Paige Tico show. Otherwise, just off the list.
Right. Okay. That's fair. All right. I have another serious one. I'm gonna throw this one that's funny. This is a character as a Phantom Menace, lover that's very near and dear to my heart. And there's just a whole Darth Sidious backstory here centered around the seduction of Newt Gunray that we definitely need to see fleshed out a little bit more in the Darth Plagueis Emperor Palpatine backstory. So I'm curious, how high on the Jar Jar scale are you, Miguel?
Anakin. Let's go with Anakin. Just because we have discussed this, like this Rise of Palpatine, the show that could be interesting, could be just overplaying your hand, I think, but could potentially be interesting. I mean, just like Andor was, like Andor could have been, a great bet. It could have been like something that they just like burned in their face. So I am going down the middle and just like going Anakin with this one.
I was going to say Chancellor Valorum until you brought up Plagueis. And it reminded me of that great novel and how I kind of wish that's what the story of the Phantom Menace was, because that was just such a great segue into that era. And it's unfortunate that wasn't really in the film. So, but I think I'll settle at the Anakin level here because, yeah, I mean, it would be kind of good, but I don't know how that would. I don't think a show featuring Newt Gunray would be really great, but maybe the events around him and Palpatine Sidious and the way that, that is orchestrated would be kind of cool, but I don't think featuring Newt Gunray would be really my choice.
I'm going to put two names on the screen back to back, and you're going to have to tell me which one you're more interested in and which, what your ranking would be. One of them is extremely prominent. One of them, not as much. First one's Lando. There's the whole, Lando series / movie thing. Obviously, Lando is extremely prominent, but there's a lot of rebellion stories that have been fleshed out in comics where he is very, featured. And there's a lot to go from, the guy on Cloud City to the general, and then what takes place after episode 6 to where he ends up, he has a daughter. There's some room there for some resistance stories, rebellion stories. And then Enfys Nest, I thought, was another one that was very interesting given, what happens at the end of Solo. Speaking of the rebellion, and that was just a fun, character to introduce there. So Enfys or Lando, which one are you picking? And then where would you be on the scale, Tom?
So Lando from the, I guess the nostalgia point of view, because I feel like there's so many great stories that I've read or seen in games or in books featuring Lando that were so interesting. The whole story in Rise of Skywalker about how him and Luke were on that mission to find Ochi. I wish we would have seen that in live action. I wish there was a flashback or something related to that, because that to me was very compelling. So I feel like I want to see more of Lando. And I was hoping for the Lando show / movie that they were going to make, that they would have Billy D. Williams in some of it and maybe like doing flashbacks, which would be kind of cool. That said, Enfys Nest is a really intriguing character as well. And I feel like Solo, I enjoyed Solo, but there were so many loose ends at the end that they never, I guess, got around to addressing again, which I thought was kind of a bummer. I wanted to see more of her. But I think if I had to pick between the two, I think I would go with Lando.
All right. Love that. I love some Lando.
So I am going, I was not even going to consider Lando, honestly, until you mentioned that mission with Luke. I think Lando, and the thing that we know about him the best, like this like persona that he embodies, like in around betting places, and like you can imagine like him taking having quite the fun at like Canto Bight or something. I think this is something that is best if not explored too much, like if you have him like a secondary character or so. So I'm not really a fan of the idea of the Lando show, but the idea of Luke and Lando looking for Ochi, at least the two of them on a mission looking for this, sounds interesting. At the same time, it's like very complicated to pull off successfully, meaning you'd have to recast Luke probably, which is probably going to feel off for many people. And then you also have the concept of this mission that is not going to be resolved for another however many years. So I guess it's like an ending that isn't like even an Andor ending. It's like just an open ending for many years. So I'm still not fully buying it, but I am a little bit more than I was at the beginning. The Enfys Nest character, I'm also not super into this idea of exploring this more, even though I think it'd be like interesting from a story point of view. My main concern is again going back to the well of the Skywalker saga and of this galactic civil war, and just like reiterating over these stories, which I am so tired of, and I just want to move on and just explore some Page Tico resistance stories.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay. I love it. Love it. So fun game. Did that hurt you too much, Miguel? Was that too painful?
It was fun.
Okay.
It was fun.
Okay.
Just because you mentioned Page Tico, so
I had to get it down there. I knew that would be one that you would for sure like. But let's go ahead. We have Rogue One, revisiting Rogue One. I had not watched Rogue One in a couple years. The last time I had watched it was in the theater right before Andor when they did the quick re-release for the weekend, and revisited it, this last Sunday night. I know Tommy revisited. Miguel, you did like the full, you binged the entire season and then went straight, into it after a lunch break. So it's very fresh on our minds. So I'm really excited to get into it. Obviously, if you're still watching or listening to this, you're familiar with Rogue One. So it's not like we need to go into the whole, like what happens in Rogue One or anything like that. But I would like to know, is there a particular story beat specifically related to Andor? Like Andor helps you appreciate this about Rogue One more? Because I would love to talk about that first and foremost. And then obviously, when you revisit a movie maybe you haven't watched. I don't know when the last time you guys watched Rogue One was, but like if it's been a while, like what's something maybe that you loved about it that you kind of missed or didn't remember how much you enjoyed it, things like that. But first and foremost, like what is the Andor contribution to Rogue One that you really, really, feel in this movie? But Miguel, you're the one that binged the whole thing. You did the whole, binge method. So if anything, you're either super ready to answer this question or everything is so compacted and compressed in your brain that it might be hard to pull some things out. But what about you? Where are you with this?
So a little bit of both actually, because I've binged it all at the end of Rogue One, I almost like I had like disassociated from this being an Andor story at the beginning. So I was just like this. It was this whole journey, and I guess they just like I bought into it because at the beginning it was like Cassian's story, and then it was Gene Erso's story, and it just bought the bridge in between fully. And I just like when I was when the credits started to roll, and I was like thinking about what to write about for my review of the full season 2 of Andor, I was just thinking of moments in Rogue One. So I guess they just like pulled it off in that sense. And so yes, it is all merged in my head at the same time. That is a good thing, because I have a very hard time not differentiating between these like prequel and sequel projects that were made years apart from each other, and with the first one not even knowing the second one was going to exist. So this was one of my main concerns with Andor. Not even concerns, but like something I was skeptical of, like Tony Gilroy's like grand plan to end Andor where Rogue One was going to begin. And to me, they just pulled it off perfectly. Because I do have some serious issues with the beginning of Rogue One. I think that the movie as a whole has some very weird pacing. It's just because it starts off beyond the opening scene with Ben Mendelsohn and Galen Erso and whatever. Like beyond that scene, it just starts off like with such high pace that it hasn't earned yet. That you're like, I was put off from the beginning, and you're introduced to like these many characters on these many places, and you don't know what's going on. You don't know like why should I care about any of these characters other than Jean, to whom like you're slightly introduced at least a bit more than the rest. But now you're coming off of Andor, and Andor ends very fast paced as well. So if you put the two of them together, it's like the rhythm that Andor earns at the end. You just like transition that into how Rogue One begins. So it really acts as a serious finale for Andor. That very well, in my opinion. And as Rogue One begins, you already know Cassian, and actually many of the lines that Cassian talks about him being like in the rebellion, and like the things that he has done for the rebellion, and like being in this being in this fight since he was like 6 years old, like the typical line. But there are like a few lines in there that you're like, okay, so that makes, so that it makes more sense now because they didn't think about this earlier, but like this has new meaning to you. And so you're already familiar with Cassian. I guess you're familiar with K2 as well. And importantly for me, you're familiar with Saw. And Saw is someone in Andor who shows up very sporadically. He doesn't really have a very relevant role to the narrative, but he is someone who has some relevance to the actual story that Andor wants to tell, the beats about the rebellion and the different phases that it can take him. So by him being sporadically like thrown into Andor, you can buy him being at the beginning of Rogue One, and like not being like I didn't feel as displaced from the main story as I used to be. Like I thought that this was like a very weird side mission that okay, you have to get here to extract this footage of Galen also like saying this,
which doesn't ever make its way anywhere else except Jin, because Jin's the only one that
exactly,
sees it, and he dies
exactly,
shortly after. He's broken off from the Alliance, all of that stuff.
exactly. So it just like felt almost like a plot device, and now it feels a bit more. If you think about Rogue One as the season, as the series finale, it makes sense that this character that was like sprinkled throughout the series, like the
Right.
showing this side of the rebellion that is like more anarchic and so on, like that he makes his way into the finale, and you can actually buy Jean being the protagonist of the finale through him, because he was like introduced earlier, and if you really buy into this like whole thing, you can buy Jean entering the story through a known character, so it makes
Yes.
sense to introduce her as the main character of this finale, because of So, and also because you've already introduced the engineer called Erso at the end
Right.
of Andor. So I just bought the whole thing. I'll be honest, I was not expecting this. I'm typically not a fan. I don't think of Better Call Saul, for example, as like a perfect prequel to Breaking Bad. I just think of them as two different series. But I bought this perfectly, and to me, fixing the problems at the beginning just solves the entire thing, because the second half of Rogue One is just like excellent war. Like
It's so good.
yeah, I really enjoyed the battle at the end. It had been a minute since I watched Rogue One. Like I had not seen it like since many months or even years before the first season of Andor. So I did not watch Rogue One since Andor started on, and it had been quite a while since I saw it. So I was even though I remembered that Vader was
Right.
or that Tarkin was in it, I was just not expecting them to show up in the next scene. So I was almost enjoying it even more for that. So with that,
Absolutely.
please someone else take it away.
Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts on it. I watched it Monday night again, and there were a few things that tonally, like it took me a second to get into the tone of it, because there are portions of Rogue One that feel like Andor, but there's portions of it that feel like the other Star Wars films. The pacing and the action scenes and the scope of it felt, I guess, I don't want to say more cinematic, because Andor is cinematic, but there were tonal things that to me were a little bit jarring. But obviously I jumped on board with it, and there were a lot of great things. Like I felt like I always felt like Saw was a little bit over the top in Rogue One, and the way he was introduced in Andor and the arc he had in Andor, as far as just the descent into madness, it just made more sense for his character when I watched Rogue One again. So I really enjoyed him much more after watching Andor. A couple of lines really stuck out at me. I was thinking, when Cassian says to Jin, "You're not the only one that," I'm paraphrasing. You're not the only one that gave up everything, basically. And it kind of punctuates, like his struggle and what he's been through and the things he's done. That line at the end when they go back to, or they decide to help Jin, and they said that we were saboteurs, assassins, the things we did for the rebellion, and this whole carrying on that theme from Andor about making it worth it. So I felt like that was really good. The one thing that was a little bit jarring to me was also the music, as far as going to more of an orchestral score. And I know that they said that the composer of season 2 was saying that they were moving throughout season 2 from more electronic to orchestral music to make it line up. But still, I think some of the, to me, it was a little jarring in places. Like I was expecting some of the familiar music. What was really cool is I watched a YouTube video with the whole end scene from, I guess, the point where they're going and, they're sending the plans, and they used music from the show Andor. And I immediately, it felt to me so seamless after watching that. And to me, that shows how much the music played, but like still enjoyable. The action scenes, Rogue One, that third act is just phenomenal, probably one of the best in any Star Wars movies. And like Miguel said, seeing Tarkin and Vader, and they were really needed. There was one scene that jumped out when they have what's his name, Dr. Evazan and Walrus Man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think Tony Gilroy would have done that. So that must be a Gareth Edwards thing, but that just, you know, stuck out to me because it seemed like it was kind of like fan service where Tony Gilroy would probably have nixed that. You know, I'm getting really nitpicky here. But I think all in all, I concur with Miguel that it is a great finale for the series. One of the things I was hoping was to see Tivik more in Andor. I know they mentioned him, but like I would love to know more about his relationship with Andor. But I think that, again, that's a small thing because it was good how in Andor, the nice thing about that is there were a lot of name drops and you felt it even if you didn't see it. Like when you heard Tarkin mentioned, when you heard the Emperor mentioned, it was sometimes even more powerful than actually seeing them on screen, just to have those name drops. So yeah, I thought it was really seamless. And like we said, you know, it's difficult for a series that wasn't even supposed to exist to lead up to this movie. You know, nothing is going to be perfectly matched. You know, I know people sometimes say, you know, there's some fans out there that thought there was some kind of romantic spark between Jin and Cassian at the end, but when you watch it, it's very almost too subtle that it doesn't really even
it has this moment.
I never bought into that one.
There's this moment in the elevator where you can, like, if you want to buy into it, you can buy into it. But I always thought it as these two characters are at the end of their world, of the world, and also of their lives, and they're just like soaking it in. So, and yeah, like some of those lines that you were repeating, I was just thinking about Biggs and the sacrifice that, because I think that was probably his biggest sacrifice, like just letting Biggs go and just accepting that he will not be with her until this is all done, and then of course the tragedy is that he will die long before that. So yeah,
a lot of what you both said I saw, and especially like the pacing, and even from the very beginning of Cassian when he's with Tivik and he's like, I came as fast as I could, and to me that some of that always felt like a little bit disjointed. Like, I know that this is important, like I know that there's like these plans out there that we got to go get, because I know what Rogue One is about. Obviously you've seen New Hope, but even just having the last 3 episode arc of Andor, knowing that this has been, you know, a few days worth of just nonstop going for Cassian to even get to Tivik at this point, and what this means to the Alliance, just to be a little different and provide something else that I noticed instead of just harping on what you two have already said. I have always loved like the Darth Vader hallway scene and Vader being a part of this, but I also at the time I have always felt like, you know, this is happening so fast. Are they really concerning? Like, Vader is doing so many other things. He's not necessarily in this critical like role of intelligence and everything. He's more of like the enforcer, you know what I mean? So are we really mobilizing Vader to deal with Krennic and this failure that happened like a few hours ago, I guess, and him showing up on Scarif instantly and then tracking to A New Hope? It always felt more of, we're just going to make sure Vader's in there to make sure Vader's in there to me. But having the last few episodes of Andor and getting a scope of, they've known about this leak that's existed, like Galen Erso, the Death Star, like these plans, it leaked, you know, through to Luthen, to Clea, and through Lonnie, and this has been like days now of them trying to plug these holes and keep the ship from sinking. So it makes sense that, you know, Krennic and the Galen Erso, the rogue pilot Bodhi, like that's not the first thing that's happened to Krennic that's caused like there will be doubts in whether or not he can perform. Like Tarkin stepping in, this isn't surprising. We saw Krennic with Partagaz before, like wishing each other the best of luck, and so for me, like, we've had so many things that have happened in the last week or two, essentially, that it makes sense that, you know what, the Empire is furious about this. They're worried about what's about to happen because of the last few days. So, okay, yeah, we're going to bring Vader in to make sure that, the ultimate enforcer is brought in. I just buy that a little bit more now that we have, the last season of Andor, seeing some of the leaks, especially with Krennic, because I always loved Krennic's character, but I also was like, is this just only the Tarkin trying to assume control, because they always are battling and jockeying for more power, but having Rogue One right after Andor and seeing some of the ways that Krennic was failing as a leader too for the Empire was really nice. And I guess the introduction of Vader would be like a number one thing, for me. And it was also nice because I was able to focus maybe on some other characters, because Cassian, like, I've seen his story and I've got to see everything play out from Andor. So it was more of, let me just even focus on like a Bodhi or Sharut, a Baze, and like they don't have necessarily the largest arcs or the most to play with in this, but most of the time when I watch this movie, my attention goes only to Cassian, only to Jin, because those are the two big ones. But with Cassian having so much of a story fleshed out, I'm like, okay, maybe I can pay more attention to some of these others. And then like when Tom, you mentioned some of Cassian's lines and moments, and yes, I sit there and I'm like, that just hits so much harder because I'm thinking of Bix holding their kid on, whatever planet that was. I forget. Yeah. And so that was kind of where I was going when I was rewatching it.
And also because you've watched Andor, and yes, Andor is Cassian's show technically, but he's also one of many people in that show. So you're already used to, okay, having this character on screen, but you don't necessarily are used to having this character be the main protagonist of every scene he is in, or every episode he is in. So whenever they change like the cast of characters around him, it's not like I was put off because now there was someone else in charge of like the narrative, which would have been Jean. And yes, you can now focus on like these other characters, which in turn does highlight that not all of them get the biggest arc. Like I've always complained about Bodhi, like just him repeating the same line that I am the pilot 3 times in every scene, which was always like very flat for me. And even like yeah, no, the rest of the characters, like you can always like poke holes in them. But yeah, I had another point, but if someone else wants to jump in,
well, we have the Rebel Alliance. I think is interesting because we really get to see Yavin grow over time in Andor season 2, and here we are. When the whole council is convened, something that I find interesting is we get Radis and some of the senators, Bail and Mon, in season 2 of Andor, and we see how like some of those senators that are they suck in season 2 of Andor, and they still suck in Rogue One, and you're thinking, how are these the people that are leading the rebellion? It almost makes you even more frustrated with some of the leadership. But then you even see Dodonna that's there. He's name dropped in Andor. Like you're like, oh, like the whole council is now, getting together. Even Merrick, the pilot for Blue Squadron, they're like, you're lucky he's not here. They drop him, and having that whole group together, you realize that we're building up to this giant council meeting that's happening, probably the biggest meeting that the rebellion has in all of Star Wars. Is that meeting next to the one they have right before they go to Endor and Return of the Jedi. Like these are probably the two, big meetings, and we get to see see how that organically grows to that moment, which is, one of the most, in my opinion, it's like one of the most emotional moments in all of Star Wars when Jin's pleading with them to send their forces to Scarif, and they just can't even agree to do this when in the face of the Empire, when it's like, what's the point of the alliance if we're not going to go to this? And it's like, man, I know that Clea is somewhere around Yavin at this point, and if she's in that meeting or if she's hearing about what's happening, how furious she has to be to know that they're not going to act on this. I think about, did Clea and Cassian have a brief conversation before maybe he left to go to Scarif? And I think about some of those things that this elevates that whole meeting even greater than it was before.
I completely agree. Well, the point that I was gonna make, and this is like the not so very positive about all of this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like about Rogue One or Andor, but like uh, I've always been fascinated, or at least even more fascinated after watching Andor. Like, how did this thing not leak so much earlier? When you have like this huge, like probably one of the biggest constructions, if not the biggest, that the Empire has ever undertaken, and you have thousands of people living here. You're like, how did it take just one pilot to go rogue and just one ISB to find out about it and just leak it? Like, um, I don't know. It's I guess you have to like buy into it and just forget about like logic for a second, because like today would have been like all over the internet.
I
in
like
a
that.
second.
Well, there's that line in season 2 of Andor when Partagas is like, it's a
It is a
miracle we found
miracle,
it
yeah, yeah.
out, found it out
Yeah,
sooner.
which I mean, of course, like they agree, like I guess that Gilroy agrees with this, because like they are very aware that there is a logic hole here, and yeah, they mentioned it like a couple times, but still, like that doesn't like
Yeah.
forgive the scene for me. Which I mean,
Mhm.
like it's not necessarily a scene, because like this whole thing was constructed backwards, where it was just started as a fun movie in 1977, where you just like. You know, going against the bad guys, and now you have to
Right.
like extrapolate what happened earlier, and of course there's just like some logic gaps all over. Like even Gilroy has said that he was very afraid of going into Yavin, because there are so many logic holes that you can poke into Yavin. Like, do they have any security? How did they not find about this? Like, everyone knows they're there, but why do they not act on it? And so on and so forth. So yeah, I guess the these are like some very minor things that I just noticed. But again, like my experience of watching Rogue One was severely amplified with after like doing it as the finale of Andor and just doing it back to back.
Mhm.
Tom, was there anything else that really stuck out to you when you were watching the movie that you wanted to highlight?
I love the end, Cassian's end with Jin on the beach, and how it kind of, I know it was different, but stylistically, it reminded me of the last scene of Bix with the baby, holding the baby. And, so I've seen some things online where people like play those back to back, and there's just something about the, and then there's a whole line, some of the poetry of it for me, I think is really beautiful. And again, it might be, maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't, but when Luthen, talks about that sunrise that he'll never see, and them ending up on the beach like that. I agree with Miguel. It just, I didn't know when I saw Rogue One, as much as I enjoyed it, there could be so much more to the story
Right.
that was compelling enough. And yeah, it's wonderful that we all have this now. We have this whole other piece of Star Wars that we have that's cohesive, and it kind of stands on its own, almost like its own trilogy in a way. So yeah, I mean, and I think I think the show we're gonna see things that we didn't see before as we go on with it in years from now, watching it again. There's so many layers, especially in Andor. So yeah, I'm really happy. It really, when you think about it, I was thinking about this. If it wasn't for John Knoll pitching this story way back in the day, we wouldn't have any of this, which is amazing.
So this isn't Andor related. This is actually High Republic related, and I haven't watched Rogue One in the last few years, and there's so much happens in the High Republic on Jeddah. Like, there is so much that happens on Jeddah. Like, how the Guardian statue falls. Like, you see like what the Holy City was like, at its peak, or what it's supposed to be at its peak. And there's battles that take place there. And when I first saw Rogue One, I thought, oh, Jeddah, like that's cool. Jedi, really close. You see the garden. I thought that was cool, but I really wasn't affected when I saw the city, blow up. It was like, all right, well, Death Star is, in motion. And I watched it now, and having seen like Jedi go on pilgrimages to Jeddah to try to seek clarity in the Force, seeing that they had these, you know, convocations of Force users from all over the galaxy coming together for the pursuit of more understanding. Like this was supposed to be like a holy place that that really pursued, you know, truth and greatness within the galaxy and destiny, and to see it just completely wiped out. And it made me just think of all of the hundreds of years and then thousands of years before that of like history that went on in this specific location that was wiped out without a second thought and was even called beautiful by Krennic. And that just, it made me mad. I was just thinking about like, oh, Solandra's show and her shield on the Battle of Jeddah 300 years ago, having to, you know, think about how that is always going to be lost, or some of the from Tales of Enlightenment, just thinking of like some of these things that were just destroyed by that. And, you know, that could be said for a lot of things as well. But even, you know, going into A New Hope, and when Bale is going to Alderaan at the end, when he has to warn his people about what's to come. And you knew when I saw Rogue One the first time, I'm like, oh, just don't go, Bale. But after we get more of like Bail Organa's story in how he helped form the rebellion and some of the things that he did to help establish Yavin in Andor, just again, every time we get one of those little pieces and it threads a little bit more, you know, I really enjoy it. But is Borgullet still the worst thing to happen in Disney Star Wars, maybe?
Yes.
And Borgullet will know the truth.
There's one thing that's worse. The title.
Oh yes.
A Star Wars story.
I do not.
No, just the like graphic.
Oh,
like,
just the way it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that.
Like I could have made that, and that's not a compliment.
In iMovie.
Yeah, exactly. So
CapCut.
But I'm like, again, I'm being very picky. I love the movie.
It is.
But yeah, that was a little jarring too.
Well, they had used so much of the budget on Borgullets that they didn't have anything left for the title sequence to come across.
They removed the pants guy from Mandalorian, which is like should have been like a new iconic thing from Star Wars, and they didn't go back to Rogue One and change the title card. That is just insulting to me.
That is a good point. Like pants guy should have never been removed. He
Shouldn't have been removed. Like if this was 1980, you now would have had like a 2,000-word page on Wikipedia about this guy. Just because this is Disney, they just removed it, and I guess that's it. So yeah, very sad moment for Star Wars.
Someone would have had like nowadays. Someone would have had like a 4 million minute video on why jeans in Star Wars makes them mad, for sure. But you know, that's a story for another day. But guys, any other final Rogue One thoughts?
No,
I really love this movie. It's I love this movie more.
Quick question for you. So you were mentioning about the High Republic in the books and Jet and so on. Do you think that you enjoyed this section of Rogue One a little bit more after reading those books, or can you separate the two stories? Like I was mentioning earlier today, I typically am able to.
Oh, I mean, that's tough. I want to say yes to some degree, but it's hard for me being, and I'm one of those people that like I'm super into the High Republic and I love like these books. So it is really difficult for me to watch the city get blown up and not just think about some of my favorite characters that are from these books. You know, it's not like I've read those books. I've read those books multiple times. Like we've done the timeline shows. Like I've talked about these characters a ton and invested a lot of my personal time into some of these characters. It's not like there's maybe there's some things from like Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi that there are nods to, like they've done comics and stories that have impacted those. For instance, like I do not watch Return of the Jedi the same way and I don't watch Return of the Jedi and think about, oh my goodness, like Kira and Crimson Dawn like played a role in them finding out about the plans to destroy the second Death Star. Like I don't think about that, so I'm able to remove it from that. But High Republic's a little bit closer to my heart, so it sometimes it just depends on the story.
Because I think that what worked for me the most about how Andor pieces together with Rogue One is that it was the same people behind it, and that you had a lot of continuity between the characters, the actors, and the creators. And yeah, perhaps this wasn't like an idea that was in anyone's mind when they were making Rogue One, but I know that there is enough intention in the room to just not only piece it together properly so that it all makes sense, but also like story wise to have this to say these things that they wanted to say, and then just make sure that it plot wise it made sense. So whenever you talk about Bale going to Alderaan, that's just like not necessarily fan service, but that's just like a plot mechanic that you have to
Right.
put in to justify this. But when you dedicated your entire last episode of Andor to build this pace to now go into Rogue One and get it on that ship and so on. I believe that because I am invested in the story and what the progression is of the overall story of the galaxy, basically of this rebellion.
I think that the space battle sequence and like the battle sequence of Rogue One, in terms of like what they do with the ships, I'm not talking about like specific like a land battle or anything, is the best that Disney's done since they've had Star Wars. Like that sequence is the best. My favorite, it's not my favorite like, action sequence in Star Wars, but like that's my favorite, like I guess full scale battle. So that was something I remembered that I had felt that way before. Now watching it again, it was almost like confirmed for me.
I mean, the Admiral Radus line of "Pick me a Hammerhead Corvette." I'm just gonna. I have an
Ram
idea.
this thing.
That's
So
just.
good. I love Admiral Radis. That's my guy. I love that guy. Any other final things before we get out of here?
I'm good.
Tom, we're good.
I think we're good. And one thing I will say is that the Andor verse, I guess we'll call it, including Rogue One, the world building is just amazing. That you really feel like they're real places, that they're the cultures that live in the inhabit these places are real cultures. It feels so authentic. And I felt that getting back to Jeddah, I felt that there too. I thought all the scenes there were really good. You felt the history of it in a way, which was really cool.
Like last thought for me is that I do think that this combination of Andor and Rogue One is like one of my new favorite Star Wars stories. Like not new, but I now think of it as possibly my top 3 Star Wars stories, like overall.
I can't argue with that at all. It's so
agreed.
It's so perfect. The game is 100% no notes on that one. That's how it is. Well, another good episode. Appreciate you guys hopping in here to chat about Star Wars tonight. Couple things. Number one, be looking for Miguel's Galaxy, another week at a Galaxy Far, Far Away article on Sunday. Miguel, any idea what you're going to be writing about this week yet?
So this Sunday is is May 25th. It's the 48th anniversary of Star Wars, and the plan is, and as long as I find the actual proper time to write at length about this, it's to check on the status of the movies and what is the plan for the next couple of years and how are things shaking up after Celebration and now after 48 years of Star Wars getting released, especially with the news now of Doomsday moving and of Secret Wars moving as well, and so on. So that's the plan for this week.
Exciting. Timeline show will be back not this week, but next week. I'd take a break to read some stuff for our James Caan interview. And, we'll be back with Timeline show. Be doing Fallen Star, be episode 49 of that coming out here in a couple weeks. Tom's working on a review of James Caan's memoir and an article summarizing our interview with him. So we're really excited about that. James Caan, if you're not familiar, wrote the Return of the Jedi novelization. He's been a writer on like several Star Trek shows, other shows. He's been in Hollywood he was in Hollywood for a long time doing various things. He's written the novelization of Poltergeist, Temple of Doom, like a lot of these big, movies that are very, very important to the history of cinema. So we had a great conversation with him. We're going to put that conversation out on YouTube and Apple and Spotify on Tuesday, with an article drop kind of going over more of it on Thursday. And of course, we'll be back with Star Wars News Net Live next Thursday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, probably. We'll see, TBD, but probably 10 o'clock Eastern Time, back to the normal time. As always, for Light and Life, everyone, remember that we are all the Republic.